This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
They eventually dropped the belts to Wahoo, McDaniel, and Mark Youngblood, and are technically fired by Jim Crockett just a few weeks later. At this point in '84, you've been in the game for about 10 years. What were you hearing about all that was going on here with the Briscoes and Georgia and the Crockett's and what have you?
Well, just pretty much what you just outlined. You know, I wasn't on the inside enough, but Bill Watts was my big mentor, and he'd tell me a few things. But it was a lot of turmoil, unrest, and everybody wanted to. You know, here's the thing: if you're a promoter like Cowboy was in Oklahoma and Mid-South, so forth and so on, you know, you didn't want to. You want to be able to put your talent on that TBS Superstation show. Even if a guy went in and did a job, getting your talents on TBS was a big deal.
Oh yeah.
And here's the other thing: getting their talent that was over off of TBS booked into the Mid-South territory for big shows was commonplace. You know, Dusty was on there a lot. He came to Mid-South a lot. Tommy Rich came in from time to time when he was hot. Anybody else was there when Watts needed a big rugged heel to play against in Mid-South or the Superdome or wherever it may be. Oftentimes he got that big heel from Georgia Championship Wrestling, and they had all the footage to go along with it, so you could put together video packages. So in your local TVs and people that didn't have cable, they were made aware of who these dudes were. Mass Superstar, Bill Eadie, a lot of guys like that. So I think that was the biggest regret of that deal going down, is that a lot of the promoters lost their opportunity to either book talent into or from TBS and Georgia Championship Wrestling. But to me, that's about all, as far as it went, you know. But nobody was, and McMahon was kind of the universal heel. You know, a lot of people, you know, were not pleased to do business with him for whatever reasons, and some were justified, I'm assuming, and some weren't. So it was unsettling. And you got a different story every day. What's going on? What's happening here? You know, Gordon Solie not being on that show was a big deal.
Yeah.
And I've always fought for the announcers to get their share of credit when it's due. And Solie was the voice of that brand and the voice of that network. And he got left out. He got completely pushed aside. And I thought that was a big mistake, because Vince wanted to have his people there, or him, to do the play-by-play, so he could tell his stories his way.
Well, the Briscoes have made the move. You know, they're going to work for the World Wrestling Federation, and they're not easy for me to say. They're not there very long before a blizzard hits the Northeast. And as the legend goes, Jack turns to his brother and says, "Well, that's enough wrestling for me. I'm going home." Yeah. And he did. He never returned to professional wrestling. Of course, Jerry's going to transition into a front office position. He's going to be a road agent. He's going to do a lot more for the company, but essentially that's the end of their in-ring career. Did Jerry tell you this famous story about Jack in a blizzard saying, "Oh, I'm too old for this shit"?
Well, you know, I mentioned earlier, I just got back from Newark, and that's kind of where I think that's where it happened.
Yeah.
In Newark, the Newark airport. He told Jerry, he said, "Well, I'm out of here." He said, "What do you mean you're out of here? We're booked so and so and so and so, you know." "Not me. I ain't going. I'm done. I'm going to Florida." And of course, it happened to be a very brisk, cold day in Newark, and it was nice weather down in Tampa. So Jack got on the first flight to Tampa, and they not to be seen again. So I don't agree with leaving your bookings. But again, Jack got caught up in the burnout factor, just like he was as the NWA champion, working all those days and all those crazy ass hard rings or bad rings, great opponents, not so good opponents. Just got tired of it, and he'd saved his money. And the fact that they had that body shop, they had a steady income coming in to help, you know, supplement their mortgage, household expenses, and so forth. But yeah, that was, Jerry said, I was shocked. He said, but I knew, and look at his eye, he meant it. He was done. But luckily, Vince was smart enough to not hold that against Jerry, and use Jerry for his skills that he had gained over all those years. Jerry was a great administrator and a hell of a road agent. So he'd make the towns to everybody and set up the matches for the talents. And they usually had 2 agents at every city. And so that's what Jerry did. And did a hell of a job with it, quite frankly. He knew how to lay out a match because he had worked babyface, he'd worked heels, he had been in tags, he'd been in singles, and had a real good eye for talent and a feel for the game. And Vince couldn't replace that with anybody that he had at that point in time. Jerry was not lazy. And some of the agents during that period had found their comfort zones, Conrad, and, Strongbow, for example. Jay was a great guy, but, he's not going to work very hard if you didn't have to get by. And Jerry wanted to make everything better, and he was younger and aggressive and so forth. So it worked out well for everybody. Jack went home and was happy. Jack was happy until the day he died. And that's when I got to know him really well, when he's back out of wrestling. And anytime I go to Florida to do something with Jerry or whatever, we'd always have lunch with Jack. I got to tell you, from a fanboy's perspective,
that was awesome, I'm sure.
Oh my God, it was just great. And the stories were just phenomenal. And my only regret, I said this one time about when I shared a suite with Muhammad Ali in New Orleans for Cowboy for 3 or 4 days. I think 3. I should have taken the conversations or taken notes or something, because we talked about, him betting on his own matches and fights rather, and all these things. And it was just amazing. And I didn't, and I regret that. The same thing with all those lunches with Jack. I should have had a little notes or a little recorder. Can I record this conversation? And or whatever, but I didn't have the foresight. But I missed the opportunity there, because those have been great books, quite frankly. So that was kind of how we did that. We got together every time I go to Florida. We'd have lunch. They had the places all picked out because that was their town. And you walk in, it's like walking in with, Elvis. People loved him, and Jerry. They're big personalities. They've become, Eddie Grimm and made them massive stars in the state of Florida, massive stars. And the fans never forgot and always embraced that popularity.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.